The Bengal Famine of 1943, a tragedy that shook the world. Imagine a land so fertile it was called the Rice Bowl of India. Now imagine that same land turning into a graveyard. Millions of skeletal figures lining the streets, children with bloated bellies crying for food, mothers watching helplessly as their babies slip away in their arms. This was Bengal in 1943, a place where not by drought, not by flood, but by policy and war, a famine unfolded that took the lives of an estimated 3 million people. Welcome to Sands of History, where we unravel the forgotten, the tragic, and the transformative moments that shaped our world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our journey through the sands of time. And if you want to help us financially, check the links in the description below. Setting the scene: Bengal before the storm. Bengal, a region in eastern India, modern-day Bangladesh, and the Indian state of West Bengal, was once one of the richest parts of the British Empire. Known for its fertile plains, bustling ports, and vibrant culture, it was the economic jewel of colonial India. Its rivers nourished rice paddies and jute fields, its cities thrived on trade, and its people lived in the rhythms of the monsoon. But under the surface, Bengal was vulnerable. Land was concentrated in the hands of a few zamindars, landlords, while millions of sharecroppers and small farmers struggled on the brink of poverty. Add to this the heavy hand of British colonial policies, extracting wealth, taxing heavily, and often ignoring local needs, and you have a region teetering on the edge. By the early 1940s, the world was at war. World War II had transformed India into a critical supply base for the Allied war effort. Eastern India, close to Burma, now Myanmar, became a key military zone. But war doesn't just mean battlefields. It means disrupted trade, skyrocketing prices, and political chaos. The perfect storm: how the famine began. The Bengal famine was not caused by a single event. It was the result of multiple interconnected disasters. First, in 1942, the Japanese invaded Burma, cutting off vital rice imports into Bengal. Burma had been a major supplier of cheap rice to Bengal's population. With that supply gone, local rice prices soared. Second, British military policies worsened the crisis. In what's now infamously known as the denial policy, the British colonial government, fearing a Japanese invasion of India, ordered the removal or destruction of boats, rice stocks, and transportation resources along Bengal's coastline. They didn't want the Japanese to use these supplies if they invaded, but in doing so, they crippled the local economy. Fishermen couldn't fish, farmers couldn't transport their grain, local trade collapsed. Third, hoarding and speculation sent prices spiraling out of control. Wealthy merchants and landowners, sensing profit, held back grain from the market, waiting for prices to rise. Poor peasants and urban workers, who lived hand to mouth, found themselves priced out of their basic food. To make matters worse, the British government in India, led by Viceroy Lord Linlithgow and later Lord Wavell, was slow to respond. Despite repeated warnings from Indian officials and activists like Amartya Sen and Mahatma Gandhi, the colonial administration insisted that there was no famine, merely a shortage. Appeals for grain imports were denied or delayed. Churchill's wartime cabinet prioritized British stockpiles and the European front, dismissing Bengal's suffering. The human cost: death, disease, and despair. By mid-1943, the streets of Bengal cities, Calcutta, Dhaka, Chittagong, were filled with the dying. Starving peasants from the countryside poured into urban centers, hoping to find food, but there was none. Eyewitnesses describe heartbreaking scenes: mothers lying beside dead infants, too weak to cry, children with hair turning reddish-brown from malnutrition, corpses littering railway stations, streets, and rivers, jackals and vultures feeding on the dead. Diseases followed quickly: cholera, dysentery, malaria, sweeping through weakened populations. Rural areas, cut off from aid, were especially hard hit. Villages emptied out, entire families vanished. Historians estimate that between 2.5 to 3 million people died during the Bengal famine of 1943. That's more than the population of some small countries, wiped out in less than a year. Blame and responsibility: was it avoidable? One of the most haunting questions historians still debate is, was the Bengal famine preventable? Many argue it was. Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, famously showed that the famine was not caused by a shortage of food, but by a collapse of access to food. There was enough rice in Bengal, but the poor couldn't afford it. With no government price controls, no rationing, and no timely relief, the famine spiraled. The British government, and especially Winston Churchill's wartime cabinet, has come under severe criticism for its role. Churchill, famously dismissive of Indian suffering, allegedly remarked that Indians were breeding like rabbits and that the famine was their own fault. Shipments of grain were diverted to Europe, Australia, and stockpiles, while Bengal starved. Indian nationalists and activists tried to mobilize aid, but under colonial rule, their efforts were limited. The famine became one more bitter symbol of British imperial neglect. Global shockwaves: how the world reacted. News of the Bengal famine spread slowly at first. Wartime censorship kept many stories under wraps, but soon, foreign journalists and photographers began documenting the horrors. Stark images of starving children and dying families shocked the world. International aid organizations tried to intervene, but the scale of the disaster, combined with wartime restrictions, made it difficult. For many Indians, the famine became a rallying cry for independence. How could they trust a government that let millions die? The famine added fuel to the growing Quit India movement, which demanded an end to British rule. The aftermath: lessons and legacy. The famine officially ended in 1944, when the new viceroy, Lord Wavell, finally coordinated relief efforts, imports of grain, and price controls. But by then, millions were dead, and countless more were scarred for life. In the years after, the Bengal famine became a case study in economics, politics, and human rights. Amartya Sen's work reshaped how famines are understood, not merely as failures of food supply, but as failures of governance, distribution, and entitlement. When India gained independence in 1947, one of the new government's major priorities was food security. Famines on the scale of Bengal's have not occurred in independent India, thanks to rationing systems, public distribution, and emergency relief mechanisms. But the scars remain. In Bengal's collective memory, in Indian politics, and in the global history of colonialism, the 1943 famine stands as a dark reminder of how political decisions, not just natural disasters, can kill millions. Conclusion: remembering Bengal. The Bengal famine of 1943 was one of the worst human-made disasters of the 20th century. It wasn't just a tragedy of hunger, it was a tragedy of policy, neglect, and indifference. As we explore these painful moments from history, we remind ourselves why memory matters, so that we do not repeat these mistakes. Thank you for joining us on Sands of History, where we uncover the forgotten stories that shaped our world. Like, share, and subscribe to support our journey. And if you'd like to help us financially, check the links in the description below. Your support keeps these important stories alive. Until next time, stay curious.